This week in IT, my guest and I, Stephen Rose, look at PhoneLink and how the new update can integrate with iOS and let you see notifications on your phone, make and receive calls, and send and receive text messages. We'll also talk about Bing and the new integration with ChatGPT, how Microsoft is integrating AI with Windows 11 and Microsoft 365, and whether organizations are going to be prepared to pay extra for premium services in things like Teams and Intune. Hi, Stephen. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm good, Russell. How are you doing?
Yep, I'm doing well, thank you. Now, I guess we can't go another week on this show without talking about ChatGPT again. It seems to be everywhere in the press. It's making a lot of waves across all sectors, really. So I wonder, is this just another buzzword that we're going to hear about this year continuously, or is this a technology that's really going to have a big impact on the way that we do everything? What do you think?
I think I think there's two sides to this. First of all, internally at Microsoft, they're saying this is equal to the moment that Bill Gates said we need to build our next operating system to leverage the internet with Windows
Hmm.
95. And that was really key to build in the browser, to start building in those tools, support for modems, internet, and Microsoft is treating that the same way. And I think other companies are seeing the same. The fact that Google, has announced a ton of stuff without us seeing anything, but hey, it's coming and we got this and that. So I think this is a game changer. I also, since there's already a bunch of AI features built into Office and Google Docs and things along that line, it makes sense to continue to build on that. And that's where Microsoft and where Google is really focusing in is how do we get rid of repetitive, work that is just, repeats over and over again and start to remove that and take AI and make it more of an assistive technology. And that's really what I see in what's being done now and what has been done over the past 3 years in the different Office suites.
Yeah, because I heard that this is apparently, or ChatGPT specifically, is the fastest growing consumer application in history, and that's quite something.
Yeah, no, it is. I've had a chance to play with it. I paid for the more premium subscription so I could get
Hmm.
access to it.
Hmm.
But I tried something like go to this article on CNN and summarize it for me. And it did. I
Yeah.
didn't just put in the URL, it went out, it grabbed that, it brought it together. Um, I think people are really pushing the limits of what it can do, but considering it will learn and build from that, I could see this as one of those, repetitive task tools. Again, in Outlook, look at this database, tell this person how much this costs, bring those aspects together. That I think it's going to give us more time to focus on a more of the creative work and the things that have bigger impact. So I think being in the beginning, that this is really that first step at integration into all the Office products. I think we'll take it to that next level.
Yeah, because I've been using it and I've just been using the free version initially, but then suddenly when I didn't get access, it
Yeah.
became I can't live without this anymore. It's so useful that I really need to have access to it all of the time.
Yeah.
Now, Microsoft, of course, have kind of stepped ahead of Google in the race to integrate ChatGPT or a version of ChatGPT into search. Now, I know that some people have actually questioned whether this kind of technology even has a place in search. But from what I've seen with what Microsoft is doing with Prometheus, I think it's pretty impressive. It's pretty good, the work
Yeah.
they've done there in terms of integration. Have you had a chance to use that? How do you think that's going to play out in terms of the Microsoft Google battle, if you like?
I think it has. I think what's interesting is that as people started to use Siri more, they realized that Siri had some pretty hard limits that you could say, "Hey Siri, set this timer." But if you said, "Hey Siri, what are restaurants around me?" it was super limited and often it
Hmm.
would get that information wrong. So being able to ask it a complex task or a multi-step task was just not something that you could do. But I think people have moved from what is this to, hey, what are the hours for this? And now they're like, Siri, where's the closest Target? Then they're going to click, they're going to go into it or Tesco or whatever and go that route.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
think
Hmm.
people were trained really well with Siri and Bixby or, any of these other sort of tools, Alexa, to want more. And I think that there'll be this balance between I just need a simple website. What am I looking for? And I'm looking for answers. I'm looking for something where I would have to then go into that website, find that information, decide if it's the right website, extract it, and then come back or move on to the next. So I think in that way, I think it will do well for things that are not resource but more deeper informative. What was the last year that this person was nominated for an Oscar, or things like that wake you up at 2:30 in the morning and you're like, I need an answer to this now. It's going to do things like that quicker for you. So I see this being a different tool in the search arsenal for different types of questions. And again, I think where Siri really leaves off and is not able to move forward, or Alexa. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you
What are
think
your
that
thoughts?
Bing, well, I mean, I've seen what Microsoft has done with Bing, and I think the way that they're able to surface information in a way that, as you said, you would probably have to go looking through X number of websites, read
Right.
through all of the information, piece it all together to really get the answer that you're looking for. But of course, with ChatGPT, you don't need to do that. It kind of understands the question that you're asking. It can tidy up the search term so that you get more accurate information what you're actually looking for. And in the little that I've used it, it's just I'm really impressed. I really think it's going to be a game changer. I guess the $1 million question is, if Microsoft gets this right, this integration with Bing, do they stand a chance of being able to compete with Google in search?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they're going to gain more market share, which is something they've
Hmm.
steadily
Hmm.
been doing, which is great, because I think the problem
Hmm.
with Google is Google results are really based upon who wants to pay the most. And that's something
Right,
that,
right.
Bing
Hmm.
has not, although they do accept that, it does not drive all that. And you
Hmm.
can't
Hmm.
get in if you've ever done Bing, Google AdWords, things like that. Unless you want to pay a bunch of money, you're not going to be a top search. So I think
Hmm.
it will be different. I don't think they're going to overtake him. Bing is not a verb like Google is. Um, and people are very stuck on that, but I think they will continue to gain market share. And I think people are going to use Bing for some things and Google for others. So I think it
Hmm.
will
Hmm.
open
Hmm.
up
Hmm.
opportunities, especially for Windows users that are using that new integrated Bing search that's part of the new Windows 2 moment release.
Yep. So that nicely brings us on to Windows 11 22H2 Moment 2, which Microsoft released
That
about.
just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? It just really does.
Yeah,
It's just got a
it's a
great
fabulous
baking
name.
spirit. Yeah,
It's a
Windows
fabulous name.
8, Windows 10, Windows 11, Windows 22H2. Yes.
No, they released this, I think, really just for testing initially. So you have to kind of
Yes.
opt into the download at the moment, but they're going to push it out more generally, I assume, this month around Patch Tuesday. So what's I think the most interesting thing that they've done, and I didn't know that they were going to do this. I don't know whether it's something that was going to put in at the last moment, or whether they'd been secretly working on it. Probably secretly working on it. Is that now the search box at the bottom of the taskbar is actually typable, so you can actually type into it, and they've integrated all of this Bing Prometheus stuff into the search panel, or the search dialog, if you like, in Windows 11. Um, and again, one really interesting fact that was mentioned by Panas Panay, I think, in the blog post, was that the search feature in Windows 11 has something like, I don't know, something stupid like 1 billion users every
Yeah.
month, or something, or half a billion, I think it was,
Yeah.
something like that. And that really shocked me, because, to be honest, I never use it. I don't know if you do, but yeah, clearly people are using it, so clearly it's important.
I think often people will, I think there's some confusion between the start menu search and the search sometimes for folks, and they'll go in to go
Hmm.
look for
Hmm.
something. And I think especially with Bing for Business, that was something where I would use search quite often to have it look for
Hmm.
documents that are in there. I think
Right, right.
the Uber goal for Microsoft is going to be, how do we tie together all of these things in the cloud? You have emails in the cloud, you have your stored documents in the cloud, you have things inside of Teams that are in the cloud. I think that the Uber goal is not only how do you search everything that's in the cloud, but how do you tie these things together? And that's something that they're doing, hey, before this meeting, here are 2 documents that may apply, or something that was given to you by the people within this meeting. Here are notes. To be able to corral all that cloud data and bring it together not only makes sense for business, but I think it also makes sense for consumer. And I think that's the Uber goal, is to connect all the cloud pieces so that everything that relates is there. And I think that's
Yeah.
really the direction that things are moving and that people want.
That's really interesting, though, isn't it? Because if you think that obviously Microsoft is trying to get you invested in Microsoft 365 and all of the services that are part of that offering, and of course Windows maybe to a lesser extent.
Oh
But
yeah.
for me, one of the selling points of Windows now, and probably more and more as we start to see these things get integrated into the operating system as well. If you're on Windows, then we're going to start blurring the line between what you do locally, what's in the cloud, things like search,
Right.
all of this AI stuff that is supposedly coming in Windows 12. And do you see that as a reason to be on Windows rather than, okay, well, we're going to replace everything with Linux, or we're going to move over to Mac OS, or whatever?
Yeah, I don't see many businesses picking up and really moving to Linux. Yes and no. I think it's great if you're a certain type of developer or you're in security or things like that. But I think, people have gotten very used to Siri, and I think Siri is great. I use it on my MacBook. It's integrated. It does a really good job. But I think that's great for certain types of workers, but for the deeper information workers that need to leverage all of that stuff inside the company, I think Windows and what they're bringing to it is going to make more sense. And I think,
Mhm, mhm.
Microsoft and Google are leapfrogging Apple in that area, an area where they could have gotten ahead. They're now focusing on VR, and, everybody already has foldable screens. There's already tons of VR out. People are now leapfrogging over Siri. Once again, Apple is behind in these areas, and I don't see them getting a gigantic leap forward in that. So I think that Windows users are going to, as the integration happens, as we find it more in the various apps, and it can leverage that, the synergies between them are going to make more sense than it does having a bunch of standalone apps that don't really integrate with Siri or
Mhm,
Bixby or
mhm.
any of these other things the way that they do within the Windows ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're sneaking things into, deep into the operating system, even like File Explorer. I think
Hmm.
it was in the last moment they added the ability to favorite particular files, and that's all
Yes.
integrated with Microsoft 365. I'm not sure that many people are aware of that feature, because it's not very discoverable. But it's interesting, all these little things that when you do discover them and start using them, I could imagine that would become a little bit difficult to live without them, because they are super useful, I think, if you can actually discover them
Yeah.
and start using them and integrating it into your workflow, I guess, is the issue. So
Yeah, one of the new features that I really like is the phone link that they finally brought up for iOS. And I know that was difficult
hmm.
because Apple's very protective over their
Yep,
ecosystem. It doesn't have the photos feature and some of the other features that we saw on Android,
yep,
but it
yep,
is
yep.
great because now I can see text messages when they come up when my phone is silent. I can see the key messages that are coming up on the screen and interact with that, and it works very well. I'm pretty impressed at how well it works. When I make a call on my phone, I see it pop up on the screen. When a call comes in, I can answer it through the screen. So it's bringing some of that Mac usability that I like because I have an iPad, I have an iPhone. So when I
hmm
use my
hmm
Mac,
hmm.
I like that integration, and I kind of miss it a bit on Windows, and it does a good job with it. And I actually
All
have it
right.
here if you want to see. Have you seen it yet?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. I haven't seen Phone Link, to be honest, since it was called Your Phone. So I
Yeah,
don't know how long ago that was. I've been playing around a little bit with Intel Unison, which is quite similar, I think, in terms
I
of the
played with that
functionality
as
that they're
well.
offering. But yeah, I'd
Yeah,
love to see. I'd love to see Phone Link and what's
let's
going
show
on
you
there
what
with
it
the
looks like.
iOS stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
So what we can see here up in the top left is we can see that we are connected. We can refresh that connection. What's great is we can see any messages. So I can see suggested contacts. I can see all the calls that have been made. I can make calls from here. And I'm seeing
Hmm.
all the notifications that pop up on my phone here. If I remove it here, it does not remove it from the phone. So it's similar to what we find in iOS if you're doing messages on a Mac,
Hmm.
etc. Like I said, there is not the phone part of it, and it's pretty limited. We can show badges, we can sort of figure out what content we want to show. We can have
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
automatically start up when we go into Windows. You have multiple devices. messages, allow the app to show text messages, badges in the taskbar, notification on PC. You just have to open up the sharing between the two. You can choose your theme.
Hmm. Hmm.
There is some troubleshooting and some opportunities to give some feedback. So it's limited, but I think it's doing it's filling in that gap, and I'm excited to see where it can go next as we continue to build upon this.
Yeah. So how does all this work? Does it work via Bluetooth?
Yes. Yeah, it's all via Bluetooth. So you basically set up a
Hmm. Hmm.
Bluetooth link between your device and your whatever device you're on and the phone, and then it sets it up via Bluetooth.
Hmm.
So and I'm actually
Hmm.
finding some of the messages actually come up quicker in the app than it even does on my phone sometimes. So what it prioritizes can
Hmm.
change
Hmm.
from group to group. But yeah, it's stable, which is good for something so early, and it works well. But I'd love to see it bring in pictures and other things like that. I think would be great. So I was less reliant upon the OneDrive sync and the
Right,
iCloud
right,
sync.
yep, yep. Yeah, I think Intel Unison does do photographs, but I
It
think
does.
the one thing it doesn't do, and I guess it's the same with Phone Link, is that you can't see your history of messages. You can only see messages that are kind of current. I guess
Correct.
that's a
Yeah.
limit. I guess that's a limitation of iOS rather than the software itself, probably, I
Yeah.
guess. But
And Apple
mhm.
puts a lot of restrictions. I know
Yeah,
when
yeah.
I was on the OneDrive team and we were working and getting known folder move, easy to do for Windows, hard to do for Mac, first of all, because there are no known folders. But
Hmm.
Apple doesn't want to give a third party product a better perceived value than something built in. So
Hmm.
they're very, very kind of cautious on how they do things, as expected, as you should if you're in that sort of position. So some of that stuff may never come, the same way we've not really seen iMessage for Android, where you can
Hmm.
do those things, or FaceTime, or even third party. They had talked about doing it through a web app. I haven't seen it yet. So, it'd be
Hmm.
interesting to
Hmm.
see how
Hmm.
that comes together.
Yeah, yeah. I think all this is great. I mean, it's been a long time coming.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, definitely, that's for sure. Okay, so you're probably best known, at least in recent times, for doing a lot of educational work around Teams.
Hmm.
So I wondered what you think about the new. Well, Microsoft is doing this a lot now. They have Intune Premium, I believe Teams Premium, and
Yeah.
these kind of add-on packages that they're trying to sell to organizations, bring in particular features like I think the Teams one has a lot of AI stuff in there, meeting notes, and all this kind of stuff. Probably you can speak better about what exactly is in that package. But do you think that organizations are going to invest in those add-ons?
I don't think they're going to at this time. I think there are certain
Right.
things like some of the meeting features where you're getting, and let's take a step back. So some of these features were available to people for free that were previewing Teams, which was great.
Hmm.
They had Green Room, they had some of the meeting features, and those got moved into premium. I think the biggest pushback that I had when Teams Premium was first being discussed was the live transcription, live translation being moved, because I felt, I have a daughter who has a disability which requires her she does much better when she can read something rather than just hear it. It's an auditory
Hmm. Hmm.
processing issue, so it takes a few seconds
Right.
for her
Right.
brain to work things out. Removing that actually makes it more difficult for her with her disability
Hmm.
and with
Hmm.
other
Hmm.
people where English is a second language. I think also with companies really rethinking dollars, it's going to be very hard. And even though only the people who are creating this content need the license, whether it's for the more secure meeting, which puts things like watermarks inside the meeting, creates secure codes for meetings, the new features that are coming to live events and webinars, and then the AI feature, which basically brings, hey, before your meeting, here's a meeting wrap up, here's the documents that are there
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
executives that have 3 or 4 meetings in the same time slot to be able to go back and get you know, kind of chat GPT. Hey, here's what
Hmm.
happened. Here's the action
Hmm.
items, all of that. Sorry, I think that's a really critical piece. But I don't see a lot of companies right now who are laying people off, who are really worried about money, are going to spend $8 to $10 per seat per month for this. And I think the Uber question is, and I'm curious your thoughts on this. I think there's a lot of concern. While AI is great, I think a lot of people are like, all right, if I'm sharing this up to the graph, what's Microsoft hanging on to? What are they looking at? What is Google looking at? They have to train the AI. So how is my data
Mhm, mhm.
being used? Is how much of it is being kept up there? And that's not been made clear. And I think we're going to see a lot of companies go, hey, AI is great, but we are not going to turn on this functionality until we better understand security, governance, maintenance, understanding what's kept, what is not kept, how we see what data is being leveraged by these companies. So I think as great as all this is, I think that there's some hesitation. Personally, is Teams Premium a money grab? Yes and no. I think there's been other products at Microsoft that people have seen that way that I think showed a lot of value, but I don't
Mhm.
see a lot of people jumping on this, especially for the AI stuff, until they really better understand security and governance and how this stuff is going to be
Yeah.
leveraged.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's, like anything that you might put into the cloud is really understanding where all of this stuff is
Yeah,
located and how you get access to it, and then how you secure it, or whether you even have the option to secure it independently.
right.
As you've said, because if you're going to have a meeting transcribed and there's a transcript, is it just a file that you can access, that you can move, that you can delete, or is it something that just sits in the background that you never actually get access to, and you just have to trust Microsoft essentially to either purge that information or to secure it, or do whatever with it, and you kind of lose that control, I guess, and I guess
Yeah.
that's always been one of the issues with moving, systems and data to the cloud is, when everything was on premises, you literally controlled every single piece. You knew where everything was, but in the cloud, well, who knows what's going on with a lot of that stuff.
Right. And in
Uh,
the cloud, you could always use your private key encryption and do things like that, which is great. And at least in the cloud, it's just being stored in the cloud. This is different because we have to send this to a processing layer
Yeah,
that's going to
yeah,
take
yeah.
a look at this data, analyze this data, and if you ask it to take disparate bits of data and bring it together, for
Mhm,
example,
mhm,
show me everything that pertains to this project, it's got to go up and it's got to grab that. It's got to have information that's stored in those documents that may be confidential, etc. So
mhm.
I think that's where the Wild West comes in right now. Is this is all great and new, but I don't think all of that has been figured out yet. I think we're running
No.
before we can walk on some of it, and companies are, this is great. We're going to play with it. We're going to keep our eye on it, but we're not going to implement it until we better understand the ramifications of the
Mhm,
data
mhm,
sharing and
mhm,
governance.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Because I think Microsoft is planning to get a lot of this AI stuff, integrated into the desktop suite of applications pretty soon as well. So there does seem to be, Microsoft not really famous for moving quickly with things, but it seems that with this they're taking a different view, and there does
It is
seem to
all
be
hands
a
on deck
rush.
there. Yeah, it is
Yeah,
all
yeah.
hands on deck.
And maybe that is the right thing to do, and then you give companies the option to to disable this stuff if they don't want to use it out of the gate,
Well, I think
which
whoever's first out of the gate too is going to get the advantage for companies starting to
yep,
play with
yep.
this and getting that. And then it's when more folks get into that space that you'll see things being drawn back. But whoever gets out there first is going to have that advantage and learn from that and understand what those walls are. The companies who are waiting to see how this lays out, again, it's going to be like the internet. They're going to go, hey, we missed our opportunity to jump out
Hmm,
there
hmm.
quickly to buy our
Yeah.
domain name for a reasonable amount of money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the next year is going to be interesting. There's going to be more
Mm-hmm.
announcements from Microsoft. I know that the engineering teams are all hands on deck on deeper integration. I mean, if you take a look at the design tool in PowerPoint, to the things that editor is doing, to all of the different things that you're seeing where the AI is already in there, I think there's going to be more opportunities to pump it up. Viva Sales has brought it in where it can now work with um, some of the sales management tools and actually grab information and get rid of some of the repetitive emails that would happen. So that integration is happening and it's going to happen quick, but I don't think companies are going to be as quick to jump on it. I think they want to play with it, look at it, and
Hmm,
take a
hmm,
seat back.
hmm. Companies are often 1 or 2 years behind of whatever
Yes.
technology is being pushed out, and of course I don't see why this should be any different. So
No,
at the
I
end
don't
of the
think it's
day.
going to be.
Yep,
And I
yep,
think with any feature, yeah, you're right. Companies are 12 to 18 months behind the new features that we're
yep,
releasing today because they want to make sure
yep.
it's not going to crash anything. It's there. It's also
Hmm.
training people on how to use it. And I think this is not going to be different. But again, the one thing that we do see that helps any software get adopted faster is if people start to use it before businesses and expect that.
Yeah,
For
yep,
example, with
yep.
Windows 95s, a lot of the functionality in Windows 95 and Windows 98, people said, I
Hmm.
hate that I don't have this simple functionality on
Yeah,
my
yeah,
PC
yep, yep.
at work. I can't move tabs around like this, or I can't do these things. And that drove a lot of the consumer technology into the business
Hmm.
products.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
think
Hmm.
as people start to make this a key part of their day, they're going to expect those same things at business. And we've seen that the consumer piece influence the business piece many times in the past.
Yep, 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 yep. Absolutely, absolutely. All right, great. Well, thanks, Stephen, for sharing your thoughts with us today. It's a really interesting conversation. And yeah, it's going to be, I think it's going to be, a really interesting year. And, I've been around a long time.
Yes,
And,
me too.
I'm quite excited for some of this stuff, because I guess, you feel this as well sometimes when you've been, in the industry for, 20 plus or even more years. It's not as easy to get excited as it was, when you were fresh and new and everything was, you were
Yes.
discovering all of this stuff. But I think something like this, it really makes me sit up and listen. This is something that's really, going to be a massive change for everybody, I think. So, and
It
I'm
does.
really
It
excited.
Yeah, I was going to say really quick, it opens up possibilities. And
Hmm.
that's when I
Hmm.
get excited when a company says, "What if we did this plus this? Would this give
Hmm.
us this?"
Hmm.
And I think that's something we all benefit from. And that's
Yep.
what I'm
Yep.
hoping
Yep.
to see here. So I agree 100% with what you're saying.
Yep. Yep. All right. Thanks, Stephen, and I hope to see you again soon.
Absolutely. Same here. Thank you.
Okay, great. If you found this video useful, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a like. If you'd like to see more like this from Petri, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And I'm going to leave you with another video that you might find interesting on the screen now. But that's it for this week, and I'll see you next time.